So I will invite Dr. N.K. Singh from the city of Mines, Dhanbad, leading diabetologist and physician from there, and Dr. Sanjay Agrawal, Secretary RSSDI from the city of Pune, to chair the first session related to therapies in type 2 diabetes. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, we can start. So good morning to you all. Definitely yesterday was amazing and milestones already set by Dr. Bansi and his team. So I welcome you all on today's first unique session. This time exactly what is happening is a start of the solar eclipse, as you know, aware. And disease like diabetes are entitled to eclipse of complications. So all is well provided the light returns and the eclipse does not become the endless night. As Victor Hugo told that the dawn and resurrection are synonymous. The reappearance of the light is the same as the survival of the soul. So I assure you the light will return, and today this session will give you a big light. So for that I first invite Dr. Rajiv Kovil to start his topic. As you are aware that he is the medical director and consultant diabetologist at Mumbai at Dr. Kovil's Diabetes Care Center. He is also Nanavati Super Specialty Hospital attached to the SL Raheja Hospital, KLS Hospital, all reputed hospitals, and invited faculty of the Diabetes Fellowship Program at the DY Patil Medical College. And he is also very uniquely secretary and member of the United Diabetes Forum and a speaker for many international and national forum, faculty for teaching postgraduate students for diploma and diabetology, and the principal investigator for many clinical trials. So he has published many articles in international and national journals, and also a gold medalist in the diabetes at the Mumbai University. With this, in the diabetes, with the what is the happening with the cardio-renal protection here?
Is his voice frozen?
Yeah, frozen.
Yes.
Okay. So should I just introduce you then? Okay. So I think today, Dr. N.K. Singh has already introduced Dr. Rajiv Kovil, and I'll ask him to take over the first lecture as opening batsman, and he's going to talk to us about changing narrative to renal cardio protection. So over to you, Rajiv, for the first lecture.
Rajiv, you can share your screen now.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. N.K. Singh, and thank you, Sanjay Agarwal, for this warm introduction. As you know that at the outset, happy Father's Day to all the fathers here. Happy International Yoga Day. And right now we are, as Dr. N.K. Singh said, that we are in the solar eclipse, and the best way for the eclipse to go is virtual events like this, which tell us that life has to move on. And congrats to Bansi, Shashank, Pratap, Hardik, everybody for putting up a fantastic show. So my talk today is changing narrative to reno cardio protection. And it's not cardio reno protection. Here we are trying to say is that does changing or preventing the progression of chronic kidney disease, does it have any ramifications on the heart and the kidney? We have always heard that probably you should use something to prevent heart disease, whether it's a statin or an antiplatelet. But can we have drugs which prevent progression of the kidney? And could kidney be the epicenter of all the cardiovascular events? And can we have drugs which prevent kidney events and in turn prevent cardiovascular events as such? So could kidney be a window to prevent death, all-cause mortality, as well as adverse cardiovascular events? So that's my whole narrative today about. And today we are sitting on a pandemic of COVID-19, but diabetes with its CKD and cardiovascular disease has already caused a pandemic globally. And we know that 40% of patients with type 2 diabetes are going to progress to some form of chronic kidney disease. And this data, which appeared almost 3 years back, tells us that just having diabetes and having a DKD, a diabetes kidney disease, could shorten one's lifespan by almost 16 years. So if you see that only chronic kidney disease could reduce lifespan by 6, and diabetes by 10. But when they are put together, there's a synergy. It reduces lifespan by almost 16 years. And if you look at the risk of mortality, cardiovascular, and renal outcome in relation to kidney disease, as the ACR or the urine albumin creatinine ratio goes up, so is the chance of cardiovascular mortality, end-stage renal disease, and all-cause mortality goes up. So there is some link between ACR, between progression of chronic kidney disease and mortality and cardiovascular mortality. So there has been a debate for the last 2 decades of whether CKD is CHD risk equivalent. We always used to talk about diabetes, and whether CKD is CHD risk equivalent, and whether we should prevent cardiovascular disease by treating the kidney. And this debate has gone on for a very, very long time. Now, this data looked at a linear relationship between low EGFR and increased albumin urea, and shown that patients with a lower EGFR and with and more increased urine albumin secretion in the urine have an increased risk for all-cause mortality and cardiovascular events. So if we could have drugs like canagliflozin, which actually reduces albumin urea and also prevents the decline of EGFR, could we have better outcomes? Could we have reduction in mortality? Could we have reduction in cardiovascular death? Could we have reduction in renal death? Could we have reduction in patient progressing towards chronic kidney disease? These are answers which we need. These are questions which we need answers to. So this is the whole narrative we are going to talk about today. Almost 40% of patients with diabetes have some form of chronic kidney disease. The reverse is also true. You go into any nephrologist clinic and almost 60 to 70% patients who have chronic kidney disease are diabetics. So the reverse is also true, that majority of patients with chronic kidney disease globally continues to remain diabetes. And most importantly, all the cardiovascular outcome trials, whether it's SGLT2 or DPP4 or injectable GLP-1, have focused on the kidney as a secondary endpoint. And they have given us some pointers that probably you could have reduction in or progression of chronic kidney disease with the use of certain SGLT2 inhibitors. But all the endpoints which were used in these studies were very soft endpoints. And we need better studies with harder renal endpoints as such. We are looking at the cost of RRT is very, very high in India. Over the last 20 years, guidelines have advocated 3 targets. As we have in diabetes, A, B, C. In the kidney, it's A, B, and A. A1C, blood pressure control, and ACE inhibitors. So ACE inhibitors, after the IDNT and renal trial in type 2 diabetes, became the standard of treatment for patients with chronic kidney disease to prevent progression. Now this data looks over the last 30 years of the progression and improvement in most of the disorders or most of the events which occur in patients with type 2 diabetes. If you look at stroke and MI in the last, from 1990 to almost mid 2000, there is almost a 2/3 reduction. And this reduction is related to the era of statins, to the era of better antiplatelets, and also interventions which came into the heart as well as the circulation into the brain. So there were interventions, there were good drugs which brought down the event rates. But if you look at chronic kidney disease, there's been no change over the last 30 years. So whatever drugs we have used or whatever interventions, there are hardly any interventions, but have not helped in patients with chronic kidney disease, and they seem to progress. And they seem to progress to either cardiovascular death, or they seem to progress to end-stage renal failure. Now, even if you look at the UKPDS, they had a sub-analysis of the UKPDS, which was, UKPDS, if you go back, was done in newly diagnosed diabetics. At every stage, for a patient in the UKPDS to progress to the next stage of chronic kidney disease, he had a higher risk to develop a cardiovascular problem. So we knew almost 2 decades back itself that patients with chronic kidney disease are higher risk for cardiovascular disease. And if you look at the whole timeline of trials which have been done in patients with chronic kidney disease, IDNT, which is with irbesartan, and renal with losartan, actually were the only 2 studies which looked at harder endpoints. And harder endpoints, I purely believe, is doubling of creatinine or progression to dialysis, or much harder endpoints like that. And we've not had any change in the guidelines also in the treatment of chronic kidney disease in the last 20 years. So there needed to be some drugs, and now we know that kidney seems to be the epicenter of majority of the disorders. So today we are in a position where kidney, from being a victim of diabetes, today we are using the kidney as treatment and probably a window to prevent chronic kidney disease, progression of chronic kidney disease, and in the meanwhile also prevent cardiovascular events. So there's a lot of emerging evidence which supports new interventions for chronic kidney disease, especially the SGLT2 inhibitors. From the earlier studies, from the cardiovascular outcome trials, the 3 cardiovascular outcome trials, the secondary endpoints did show that probably usage of SGLT2 could prevent progression of renal endpoints, a composite of renal endpoints as such. And what are the many proposed renal effects of SGLT2? The reduction in intraglomerular pressure. Obviously, it increases glycosuria. Probably the interstitial volume reduction. It does cause some diuresis initially, the oxidative stress, some amount of intrarenal angiotensin upregulation. It does improve the tubular-glomerular hypoxia and thus reduces inflammation and fibrosis in the glomeruli. It also reduces the blood pressure and the arterial stiffness. So there's a lot of hemodynamic role that an SGLT2 plays. We still don't know exactly the hypothesis. We still don't know the whole mechanistic features. It's very complex, but we still don't know exactly how it helps. But these are all the hypotheses which probably have contributed to the SGLT2 giving benefit in the kidneys as well as in the heart. So these are the mechanisms of cardiorenal benefit by SGLT2 inhibitors. SGLT2 inhibitors do reduce the tubular interstitial burden. There's also this whole hypothesis that the kidney seems to be the epicenter for all kinds of cardiovascular events, and a chronic sympathetic overactivation does occur in patients with type 2 diabetes. SGLT2 inhibitors have been shown to reduce blood pressure, but there is no increase in heart rate. This whole thought process that it doesn't increase heart rate went on to further believe that probably it has some effect on the sympathetic nervous system. So by the SGLT2, by reducing the tubular interstitial burden, may have some kind of effect on the renal efferent nerve tone, which affects the central sympathetic nervous system, which later on reduces the sympathetic outflow to the heart, to the vessels, to the kidneys. And probably that's the reason that you have a cardiac benefit in patients with type 2 diabetes who are on SGLT2 inhibitors. Apart from that, the SGLT2 inhibitors also have been shown to increase the hematocrit, and it is not related to the reduction in volume. Data has suggested that, and hypothesis is that probably the SGLT2 inhibitors reduce the tubular interstitial hypoxia. The tubular interstitial load goes down because you don't need to reabsorb the glucose, because of which the fibrosis goes down. There is more production of EPO, there's more RBCs, there's increase in hematocrit. That also helps patients with heart failure. So there's a lot of proposed mechanism of cardiorenal benefit by the SGLT2 inhibitors, but the sympathetic outflow and the increased hematocrit and the ketosis theory and the change in the whole myocytes and in the tubular interstitium probably are the ones which we get benefit with. So there have been trials where we have looked at renal endpoints with the DAPA-CKD and the EMPER, but the one which has been published today is the CREDENCE, which looked at almost 4,400 patients, and we'll go in detail as well. Now, CREDENCE was a primary renal outcome trial for SGLT2 inhibitors in patients with chronic kidney disease and diabetes. Now, if you look at this CREDENCE trial, CREDENCE was a double-blind randomized controlled trial which looked at patients who were very high risk from the kidney perspective. So these were patients who had an EGFR between 30 to 90, also had a UACR between 300 to 500, and all of them were on established ACE inhibitors or ARB. So they were on established drugs which prevent progression of chronic kidney disease. That's why the significance of this particular trial becomes important, because it's over and above the effects of ACE inhibitors or ARB. And patients 4,400 were put in two groups of CANA 100 versus placebo. And if you look at the primary endpoint was end-stage kidney disease. End-stage kidney disease means that the eGFR is less than 15, which is documented for at least a month. Patient is either on dialysis, and that's end-stage kidney disease. Doubling of creatinine, again, it's at least for a month, so it's not something like a pre-renal azotemia, renal or cardiovascular death. The secondary endpoints were a composite of cardiovascular death or hospitalization for heart failure, or the secondary endpoint was a 3-point MACE, which we use in cardiovascular outcome trial, which is CV death, non-fatal MI, and non-fatal stroke. Hospitalization for heart failure, cardiovascular death, all-cause death, renal composite, as you can see, it's renal composite, end-stage kidney disease, doubling of creatinine, and renal death, and a 5-point cardiovascular composite. These secondary endpoints were analyzed in a hierarchical order. If you look at the patients, there were approximately 60% of patients who fell into stage 3 chronic kidney disease, with 30% of patients actually in stage 3B chronic kidney disease, and 90% of patients having an albumin excretion more than 300. So you had high-risk patients who were at very high risk to progress towards a kidney problem, and you had patients who had a lower eGFR and a higher UACR. So these were high-risk patients from the renal standpoint as such. And what did we see? The primary outcome, which was end-stage disease, doubling of creatinine, or renal or cardiovascular death, you had a 30% reduction at the end of 42 months at the primary outcome of end-stage renal disease, doubling of creatinine, or renal or cardiovascular death. Now, if you look at the impact of canagliflozin on renal outcomes, if you look at the primary outcome, the primary composite outcome, you have a 30% reduction. But if you only look at the renal outcome, which is end-stage renal disease, doubling of creatinine, or renal death, which are all very, very important hard endpoints, you have approximately a 34% reduction. And if you look at even further harder endpoints of dialysis, transplant, or renal death, you have almost a 28% reduction. So a lot of SGLT2 CVOTs have looked at secondary endpoints from the kidney perspective, but they have all looked at softer endpoints, change from macroalbuminuria to microalbuminuria, or micro to normal. Here you're looking at very hard endpoints. So whether it's end-stage renal disease, doubling of creatinine, or renal death, these are really hard renal endpoints, and you see a statistically significant reduction using canagliflozin in these high-risk patients, high-risk kidney patients. Again, if you look at the primary outcome by the baseline screening eGFR, so whether you were in stage 3 kidney disease or you were in stage 2 kidney disease, you had gross proteinuria or you didn't have gross proteinuria, the effects were very, very consistent for canagliflozin versus placebo. If you look at overall renal safety, whether it was AKI, whether it's hyperkalemia, or any other serious adverse events, were much, much lesser for canagliflozin as compared to placebo. The other interest that we usually have is euglycemic diabetic ketosis was slightly higher, but all the other things were mycotic infections were slightly higher, which we would expect with an SGLT2 inhibitor. Canvas threw up these two problems, fracture and also amputation. So as you can see, this was followed up in the CREDENCE study, and there was no difference between placebo and canagliflozin in the number of fractures. Also, lower extremity amputation, they had to do a protocol change based on the Canvas study results, and you can see there's no difference between lower extremity amputation as well. Now, again, when you look at the cardiovascular outcome, which was secondary endpoints in the CREDENCE study. So if you look at a composite of cardiovascular death or hospitalization due to heart failure, you have a 31% significant reduction in the composite of cardiovascular death or hospitalization for heart failure in the CREDENCE study. If you look at only HHF or hospitalization for heart failure, you have almost a 39% reduction in hospitalization due to heart failure. If you look at the 3-point MACE, which is cardiovascular death, non-fatal stroke, and non-fatal MI, you have a 20% reduction. So as you all may be aware, that canagliflozin is the only SGLT2 which has got indication for reduction of the 3-point MACE in the US. So again, this again proves that the reduction of 3-point MACE, reduction in the composite of cardiovascular death or hospitalization due to heart failure, and hospitalization due to heart failure looks like a class effect which has been seen with all the SGLT2 inhibitors. So if you look at the cardiovascular outcome studies or the cardiovascular outcomes from the CREDENCE study, which was secondary endpoints, if you look at the composite of cardiovascular death or hospitalization due to heart failure, you have a 31% reduction. And also, if you look at the 5-point MACE of a composite of cardiovascular, which includes hospitalization for heart failure and hospitalization for unstable angina, you have a 26% reduction as such. Again, if you look at major cardiovascular events in the renal subgroups, whether patients were at a EGFR between 30 to 60 or 60 to 90, or patients had a baseline higher gross proteinuria or lesser, they all benefited as far as their event goes. Now, this looks at primary and secondary prevention. Now, though we had 4,400 patients in the CREDENCE study, you had almost 50% of patients who did not have established cardiovascular disease, and you had 50% patients who had established cardiovascular disease. Let me remind that again, these patients were patients who had very high risk from the kidney perspective. They were high risk patient to progress towards the next stage of chronic kidney disease. They were patients who had an ACR between 300 to 500 and an EGFR between 30 to 90, but they were divided based on the cardiovascular disease. This is a sub-analysis of the CREDENCE study. So if you look at it, if you look at primary and secondary prevention in terms of cardiovascular death or heart failure, there's no difference. So whether you are having cardiovascular disease or not having cardiovascular disease, there's no difference between primary and secondary prevention. Again, if you look at cardiovascular outcomes by primary and secondary prevention, again, there is no difference. What is interesting from this particular analysis is that these were renal patients who were high risk to progress towards a renal outcome. But as you can see, that patients who did not have established cardiovascular disease, but who had established probably risk factors from the kidney perspective, were also very high risk to develop cardiovascular events. So primary prevention of cardiovascular events in patients who exhibit risk factors for the kidney should be put into practice, and these patients would benefit with an SGLT2. So as you can see, that patients without established cardiovascular disease but higher risk and carrying risk factors for kidney disease also have a lot of events. So there needs to be a lot of primary prevention also put in these patients as such. What are the extrapolated long-term effects on EGFR? If you compare the EGFR between canagliflozin and placebo, as you can see that there's a reversible reduction with canagliflozin initially, and it continues. And as you can see, there's a difference of almost 4.59 at the end of 40 months of randomization. So there's a 60% reduction in the rate of EGFR decline with canagliflozin. Now, if you project this effects of EGFR, now if you look at a patient who's at an EGFR of almost 60, he would progress if he's not on canagliflozin, if he's on a placebo, he would progress to an end-stage kidney disease in the next 10 years, taking into account the CREDENCE study and the extrapolation of CREDENCE study in a patient who has a 60 EGFR. And if he's on canagliflozin, we can prevent the progression up to 25 years. So this is a hugely clinically significant advantage of SGLT2s, that especially canagliflozin, that it not only can prevent the progression of chronic kidney disease, but it can also prevent cardiovascular events in this high-risk patients with chronic kidney disease. So what you can achieve is a 15 years reduction as such. Again, the canagliflozin has been approved in India to reduce the risk of major adverse cardiovascular events, which is cardiovascular death, non-fatal MI, and non-fatal stroke in adults with type 2 diabetes. It has also been approved in India to reduce the risk of end-stage kidney disease, doubling of creatinine, cardiovascular death, and hospitalization due to heart failure. So in summary, I would say canagliflozin is indicated as an adjunct to diet and exercise to reduce the risk of MACE in adults with type 2 diabetes, and also to reduce the risk of end-stage kidney disease, doubling of creatinine, hospitalization of heart failure in adults with diabetes, with nephropathy, with albuminuria. Thank you so much. So the take-home message with that would be that with the evolving role of SGLT2 inhibitors in cardiovascular and renal disease, the scenario is fast changing. We need to understand that the kidney could be a window to prevent cardiovascular disease. Approaches to prevent progression of chronic kidney disease would have effects not only on the kidney, but also on the cardiovascular system. Thank you so much. Over to you, Pratap.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, for an excellent presentation. I think this kind of brings up a lot of questions. Pratap, I can't see any questions in the chat window. So are there any questions at your end?
You can ask 1 or 2 questions from your side. By the time
Okay.
I will share the CV